And welcome back to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. Thank you for all the Facebook love. Welcome, Adam. Glad you're watching. GP, thank you so much for all the kind words. I really appreciate it. I do. And you know, you guys who are out there listening, and girls and gals, be generous with your comments. For people on this side, and I'm not just talking about myself, I'm talking about anybody on the station or anybody who does a live stream who's sharing themselves with you. Let's be generous and let them know how much we appreciate them and how much what they're saying either affects us or helps us or we agree with, because that generosity will be reciprocal, and not necessarily, when I say reciprocal, I mean reciprocal from the universe, not necessarily from the person. It's not, and this is something I really try and get people away from, because then things become transactional. It's like when you are generous with someone and then you expect them to be generous back with you, that means you're not coming to it with the right energy. You be generous with somebody for the sake of being generous, not to get anything back. All you have to know is the more you're generous with other people, the more the universe will be generous with you. And don't expect it to come back from that person. The generosity may come to you from a completely different place, a completely different person, a completely different aspect of your life. It's not about being transactional. It's not about, oh, okay, I'm going to be generous so I can receive more. No, that's not the point. We're generous because we have an overflowing cup, an overabundance. And so we just naturally want to spread that generosity. It doesn't have to come. I mean, there's so many examples in my life. Let me see if I can pull out a good one of just, being generous and how that nurtured me so much. I mean, just as a small example, let's say being in this shamanic facilitation training that I am in, I show up and I show up in service as much as I possibly can. I'm generous with my time and with myself, and I'm learning in the process, but I show up and I try and be as generous as I can be with myself, with what I'm doing. And afterwards, maybe I'm a bit tired. Maybe I'm a little worn out from it, but that's fine. So I sleep a few extra hours the next couple of days. But then the generosity I get back from people for being in service is tremendous, and it uplifts me and it supports me. And indeed, the more I feel that generosity, the less tired I am. Right? Haven't you ever had that experience where it's like you go and you really give of yourself and sort of physically you're tired, but energetically you're pumped up?
Yeah, it's like you get your spiritual second wind.
Right.
It just happens like that. I wanted to go back to what you were saying, though, as far as this idea that, we got to keep the flow going.
Yes.
So it's like, even if you don't have a lot of money and you want to make $1 donation for hurricane relief or help people in Puerto Rico or whatever, it's like just giving that $1, you're going to get that money back. Things keep flowing back.
Right.
And when you're talking about these millionaires and billionaires who live in this ideology of lack and they don't want to give up the money or help other people, what they don't realize is the more money that they would help people with, the more money they would get back, because they're keeping the flow going.
Yeah, you know what? A great example of that, I'm going to shout out my dear, dear friend, now turned monk, Giorgio, who became a Buddhist monk. But, I spoke to him beforehand, and before he left to become a monk, and he is an acupuncturist, he had an acupuncture practice. He told me how, in the last 2 years of his practice, before we bought it from him, that they were the best 2 years ever. And he said he didn't do anything different, except that he was donating more money to, some Buddhist foundation or something. And so he was just being more generous.
Yeah.
And he wasn't doing it to get. He was doing it because it was the right thing to do, and he just felt it in his soul.
Right.
So because he gave more, his practice flourished. And I mean, I'm just using him as one example. I have dozens and dozens of examples of people doing the same.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's about when you feel good and your vibe is high, and that energy is connected to source, and you're just feeling really great about yourself and life, good things are going to happen.
Right. And actually, as GP says on the Facebook stream, he says, greed is only the other face of the fear of lack. Yeah, but the surest cure for the feeling of lack, because lack is purely a feeling. Lack is the meaning we make from what we have or don't have. But the surest cure for it is to be generous. Because when we are generous, and again, it's not about dollars and cents. It's really about our energy. And being generous can be just generous with being joyful and happy with people and cheering people up and being generous with our smile. Right? How often do we smile to strangers on the street? Now, I know, in small town USA where everyone knows each other, everyone says hello to each other. It's much more common. But majority of people like us live in big cities where we're always rushing everywhere. And so, you have your I like to call it the rush hour face on. Like, I got to get where I'm going. Yeah. So, like, just being generous with our smile, all right, makes us feel better. And so the act, again, the spiritual practice of generosity is the surest cure for the feeling of lack.
Yeah, yeah. Also, how about being generous to ourselves?
It all starts there. Thank you for pointing that out, Rob.
It's just about, let's not be stingy with ourselves or have lack with ourselves, or, let's treat ourselves well, and it doesn't only mean buying things for ourselves.
Exactly.
But it could also be how are we talking to ourselves? Are we treating ourselves with kindness and being generous with that? Right. Or are we beating ourselves up? So it's important to pay attention to this stuff because, again, like you said, that's the foundation where it all starts.
Right. Exactly. I'm so glad that you brought this up, because it's not until we are generous with ourselves that we can be generous with other people. And being generous with ourselves can be about practicing self-care. It's about going out and getting that massage because your body is aching, or taking some extra time off just so you can sit and relax and be with yourself and sit in the park and be with nature, or whatever it happens to be with you. Be generous with yourself, because that recharges our batteries. That builds us up energetically. And it's from that position of being generous with ourselves that then it becomes so much easier to be generous with other people. Inevitably, people who I see who feel that there's a lot of lack in their lives are not generous with themselves because they feel they can't, quote unquote, afford to be generous with themselves. You can always find ways to be generous with yourself. It's not about how many dollars are in your pocket. It's about how you treat yourself. It's about what you do with your time. It's about, following that path of what lights up your heart. And maybe it's about reaching out to friends like, oh, no, they're not going to want to talk to me because I don't have a lot of money. BS. Bullshit. Talk to them. Maybe they just want to know what's going on with you. They just want to hear from you. They just want to know that you're okay, right? Be generous with your communication. I mean, it's amazing how, like, people who don't reach out a lot, they just kind of feel like, why don't people reach out to me? Reflect it back. Why aren't you reaching out? If we're generous with our communication, we're not worrying about people reaching out to us because we're communicating with lots of people. Hey, I'm the first to admit, I'm the pot calling the kettle black. See, you even got the black shirt on. I'm the pot calling the kettle black. I know, like, I don't reach out to people as much as I would like to because of whatever story I tell myself. But I do know that when I do reach out to people, when I do just pick up the phone randomly and call someone or send someone an email because I haven't seen them for a while and say, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Let's just, if we can't have time to get together for a cup of tea, let's just have a nice conversation. So, any final thoughts for our wonderful audience, Rob?
Well, thank you so much for asking, and thanks for having me on the show. This has been so great.
Turned on.
What's
Just so
up,
you
y'all?
can see here,
How's
he's a
it
real
going?
person. He's
Rob
not a
K
disembodied voice.
How's it going? So, no, I wanted to say, just go back to what you said, and for me, it's one of the most important things that you said, which is something like compliments and appreciation are so underrated. And it's so important to let people know that we appreciate them, to compliment them, to remind them about how great they are and how grateful we are to have them in our lives.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Thierry, thank you for your contribution today on the show.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
I always like when there's at least somebody else so I don't have to talk for an hour straight.
Although you could.
Although I could, and I have many, many times.
And you probably will.
And I probably will, yes. Thank you. So I just want to remind people, like, there's a little bit of a change in the schedule today on Talkradio.nyc following my show. We're actually, Oscar's taking a little bit of a break, but we're replaying his shows from the beginning. So if you have not caught Oscar's show, please stay tuned and listen to his show, followed by a brand new show from Kai Cole on our Daily Magic, followed by Adam's show, Is It Plugged In? And we're replaying a show of his because he's reformulating his show a little bit. He's maybe renaming it. He's still working it out, but don't worry, he will be back. But, we're playing some of his old shows that you may not have heard. So I hope you will stay tuned for all of that. And again, tomorrow, Joe Bondi has a brand new show tomorrow. It's pre-recorded. We just recorded it today, but tune into his show tomorrow. Follow In the Know 420, followed by Follow Me Friday with Joan and Priya, and ending up our week with Tony Martignetti, Nonprofit Radio. Thank you all for all the love, for all the generosity, for all the recognition. Craig, Mona, thank you for joining in on the Facebook live stream. Thank you all for listening. And remember, we do this every week, 12 noon to 1 p.m. And if anything I said resonates with you, or you want help with any of this, or support, feel free to reach out to me, sam@ddwc.nyc, for my coaching and healing practice. Thank you, guys. Talk to you next week.